Hey everyone, welcome to the Friday show. Now off to Russ, who has something to say.
Well, I wanted to welcome everybody to the death of National League Baseball, where baseball used to be played the way they used to play it. I've been seeing a lot of ridiculous things on my page, like, pitchers can't hit. They're not good athletes. They're not this and they're not that, right? And I just spoke to Jim Morris. Everybody remembers him from the movie The Rookie. And
Sure.
he was also a pitcher. People forget, like in Little League, pitchers are usually the best athletes on the team and usually play multiple positions. They are many times great hitters, but then what happens is as they go up the ladder, they're not allowed to hit as much. They're not allowed to take more than 5 swings in the cage. They get yelled at to leave after the cage. So this has been like a systematic breakdown that has been going on, and baseball just decided to steamroll it through. But really, when I see people saying it's been an abject failure for pitchers hitting, it's really wrong. It's the system that's failed them. These guys can hit.
Can I ask you something? Yeah, Russ, baseball people. I want to ask this question. When I'm a kid and I'm going through Little League, I often remember that the pitcher was the best hitter on our team.
Absolutely.
Where does that? Is it just because they're the best athletes in general?
Yes.
So what happens? Because baseball, the level of athleticism in baseball is that, right? So.
Well, usually they move those players to other positions. I mean, like I think A-Rod was a pitcher in high school, and then they moved him to shortstop or third base or shortstop.
When do these great athlete pitchers lose the ability to hit?
Yeah, well, what happens is that they're also the hardest throwers because they're the best players, and in Little League, that's what you're looking for because intimidation is a big part of it when you're 10 years old, and then
I always say that about everything. Yeah,
and like Mike said, then those players start, either they decide in high school that they're going to be a great pitcher, and then they put all their emphasis on that, and by the time you get to college, you've got to, you got to decide what you're going to be,
okay,
pitcher or and
you just forget how to hit.
Player, so
just forget how to hit somewhere along the way.
But I mean, I don't
take batting practice. Is that it? As you're not taking practice?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're just not.
You don't let them. Yeah.
You're only pitching every 4 days.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you're not hitting. Yeah. I mean, gosh. Yeah. That's true.
I don't agree with this move, but it as Russ and I have talked on many a show here, it's been a long time coming. It was bound. Manfred was bound and determined to have a DH in the National League, but the thing is. And there are some people like I remember, like I know the Yankees had a problem a few years ago where one of their star pitchers, Chang-Ming Wong, got hurt running around the bases, and you hate to lose a pitcher either by getting beamed at the plate or running the bases, but he could just as easily get hurt, trying to throw somebody out at first base. So
right.
Yeah, I got something I want to.
Yeah. Okay. What's up?
Talk about. I saw yesterday that the president, the athletic director at the University of Michigan, came out and said 2 things, which I think he should be lauded for,
right.
Because already I've seen one for sure, and I think another's thinking about making players sign waivers in order to play college football, saying they want. Well, what Michigan's AD said, 2 things, which I think. Again, that he should be lauded for, and that is that number one, nobody's going to have to sign a waiver to play football. If you're coming in, we'll take care of you regardless of what happens, and we're going to try to guarantee your safety. And then the other thing he said is that he's not going to put the athletes in a bubble. He said they're going to have the same experience that we have with all of our college students. They're not professionals. Number one, they're still student athletes.
Yeah.
Here, we're not putting them in a hotel.
Yeah, I like that.
That I get. Yeah.
Yeah. They have to.
Yeah, and he said we're just going to treat them like normal students. And he said, are we going to caution them about when masks are going to be worn? Of course we are. He said, but he said, we got to stop pretending, that we have to do everything the pros are doing. He said we need to do the way we do it for all students. So, I think that's kind of a refreshing, attitude to have.
I don't disagree. I mean, my daughter just found, they're all waiting to see what they're going to do with school. I'm sure, Anthony, you're wondering what the hell. No one knows what they're going to do with school, right? No one knows the fall.
At the moment, no. I mean, we're still sort of, there's plans, there's ideas. We've talked about. I've actually before the end of the week, I have to do a survey of whether or not I feel comfortable coming back into the building in August. So we have that factor going into it as well.
Yeah.
We all have these things that the logistics that we're dealing with going into when we get to the fall.
As I heard someone say, that there's really that people were joking the other day saying the sports leagues have spent more time than the high schools of this country have spent trying to plan what's going to happen next. It's not not too far off. I mean,
we're fond of saying in education where we can build the plane while flying it.
Right.
I've got several teachers in my family, and my daughter is a teacher, and her and I were discussing just recently. I was just talking about how difficult it's going to be, coming back. And, in Michigan, we've had obviously virtual learning. And from what I've been able to ascertain from talking to the teachers I know, it hasn't gone well. They just can't get the kids to.
Tough to get them in. I know my experience as a Philadelphia teacher, Kevin, in addition to my writing, but my primary job as a teacher, if I had a 40 to 45% return rate on my students' assignments, I almost did a stand. That was a great day. More often than not, you were in the 30 percentile of return work. It was tough.
Well, and the other thing that it was, and I think everybody sort of knew this stuff, but, they never really gave it much thought, is our economy is dependent upon having kids in school. Mm-hmm. And the issue that we have,
very much so.
Yeah. And the issue we have now is, we want to try to get the kids back in school. We know, obviously, that they're in the low range in terms of the danger level for them. Right. But, they can be carriers and so forth. And if we keep them home, the people that would have to watch them are the grandparents. Anyway, and a lot of people can't afford daycare. So it's just kind of a messy situation all around.
You would probably love this, though, Kevin. You would probably love being able to watch them.
Well, yeah, but it is complicated. Our situation is a little bit different than other people's.
Well, at least you can teach your grandkids Rat Patrol, Kev. That's good. Or whatever show you're watching.
Combat. Well,
combat.
Yeah, that's what I'm on. I remember there's only 172 episodes, so I still got a long way to go.
Hey, look, I've got through 7 seasons
of the bear issue. Kevin, did you ever get to the bottom of the bear? We talked about this.
Oh, the bear issue.
The book that we Owen and I did our own little a thing about it. On Facebook. Really fun.
We really had fun kind of talking about that. So
it's excellent. All right, you got to tune back a little ways. You want to check that out? I can go back to Mike's back end here. Okay, Mike, cool. All right, so let's start into the show. Okay, here we go. All right, today is it's Father's Day this weekend. There you go. What does that mean? All right. I just said it doesn't hold the same clout that Mother's Day holds.
It means I'm not celebrating anything.
Right. Same here.
It means if we go down to the shore, I don't have to get up at 6 a.m. to walk the dogs on the beach. That's the only thing it means. But if it rains all weekend, we're stuck here. It doesn't matter. Anyway, there we go. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, June 19th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Anthony Mingioni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and the goings in the hockey world. And we're going to talk a couple things today. We're going to talk about the Arizona Coyotes and Nashville Predators. We're going to talk about Kevin's article on Buffalo Sabres, and I'm again getting Kevin's thoughts on the whole Sabres thing. And I also have something that I'll just show you later. But that's a little hit for it. All right, there's a little teaser. And here we go. I wanted to start off today because we have talked a lot about the Sabres. I wanted to start off first on this whole concept of the Predators and the Arizona Coyotes, because I think it's one of the more intriguing series out there. And it's two teams. It is funny, Kevin, because when I think of this, I know we've talked a lot, and I know these are two of your favorite teams to watch. You've always said that. You've always said that you watch these two teams all the time.
Yep. Yeah, I do. And I think it's going to be a fun matchup, and I think there's a lot at stake for both teams.
Yeah, you're right.
it's more than just getting in the playoffs. And if you're John Chaika, you were the youngest general manager in professional sports history, and you've been lauded for the work you've done, but you got to get in the playoffs, and you got to do it now. I think there's a lot on the line. New ownership is looking at this, trying to decide moving forward. So I think there's pressure on everybody in Arizona. They don't score a lot. But they're pretty good defensively. Their goaltender's back. But, Nashville's got pressure too. They're a team that, a lot of people thought underperformed, this season. And, now they've got their coach who has brought about greater accountability. But, David Poyle's never won, and he's been in this league a long time. And, he's running out of chances. So I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. And I think it's a bit of a coin flip, to be honest with you.
I do too. It's a really hard one to look at, and they do play each other tightly. I looked at the games they played this year. I watched the 2 games. They only played 2 games because the third game was supposed to be on March 23rd. But they played twice. They each won 1. And they were good games. I mean, they were solid games, and they were low-scoring games, and they were kind of what you'd expect a little bit, because these teams do both have a little trouble scoring. That's something you'll say. At the end of the day, they're both. I think they're both defined more. I mean, the Predators, in my opinion, if I was to define the Predators season at all, and they're one of my favorite teams to watch as well, I would say the Predators are defined by incredible defense, let down by a haphazard goaltending. I feel like that's what they are. I feel like they are a great defensive team with goaltending that's kind of all over the map.
Well, let me just say this, because the Coyotes that we're going to see, there are 2 different teams. There's the Coyotes with Darcy Kemper, and there's the Coyotes without Darcy Kemper. The ones with Kemper, I think, can win a round. The ones without, I don't think can. Now they have talent. They have a lot of young talent. They have a couple pretty good defensemen, but I think it comes down to Kemper being the way he played during the season before the injuries. And if he can do that, then I think they can steal a series against a team that I think has more talent in Nashville, at least up front and on the blue line with Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis. But without Kemper standing on his head, I don't see them having a good chance.
To back up your point, Darcy Kemper's is a 30-year-old, had like a Vezina-worthy season. I mean, he was up there. Like he finished 3rd in save rate with a 928. I mean,
he's real strong. I saw more Nashville live this year because they were in the Winter Classic, and the amount of talent they have for the amount of points or goals they got is just awful. And nobody seems to really still have an answer for it. I mean, Roman Josi is the team's leading scorer. I mean, that's, you could start there, but he's also one of the best defensemen in the league. And if we talk about the Norris, I'll go on further about Josi.
We will do
his
that.
Value to the team. But end of the day, I look at this and I say, if Nashville unlocks even 10% of that other scoring that hasn't been there, they're going to beat Arizona. I don't even care if Kemper's on his game or not. But if they don't, they're going to lose again. And so that's what's maddening about the Nashville team right now, because you don't know if they're going to be able to score. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and I think with the Coyotes, conversely, I'm looking at certainly with some of their offense up front, and you do have some flash, obviously, in Kessel and Hall, but I think it's much for them. You have some other elements of that team that, because they're fairly young up front, with players like Keller and Garland. I think they're a team that I really, it's one of those teams where they're going to get into the playoffs for the first time for many of these young players, and in some cases it works to your advantage, especially when you go up against a Predators team who's been in the playoffs numerous times, has gotten deep at least once. The tank may be close. I look at that situation where it's almost like you wonder whether or not the Preds, tank is close to empty, and in a short series, if the Coyotes keep it close and Kemper can be on. Plus, they have a pretty good blue line. Some good talent, I think, on their blue line as well. I actually like the Coyotes' chances in this series if their young players can swim in this end of the pool and feel like they're not going to, struggle as much.
This is real gut check time for the Preds, as Kevin said. I mean, I think this is gut check time because you get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and then you don't get that far in the playoffs, and then the following season, that's it, right? This is which way they're going to go, right, Kevin?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the players that we should be talking about and nobody is talking about is Taylor Hall.
Yeah.
Like Taylor Hall, if he could take over the series. I mean,
Talk about a lease on life, like a new lease on life. Taylor Hall got. I mean,
he could really, lift this team up. We've seen it before where one or two guys in a playoff series have done it, and then if Kemper plays well, they do that. But I like what Russ said about if everybody played well up front for Nashville, they're going to win this series. I agree with that as well. The problem is it's been a long time since Ryan Johansson played well. Philip Forsberg played well 2 seasons ago, but not this season.
Right.
Where was Matt Duchene? Like he has been
13 goals.
Major disappointment.
Yeah.
For that team, they're not getting. They don't have a top forward performing at a high level.
The weird thing about that is Kyle Torres actually played better than anybody towards the end of this off. Like he was,
but not the whole season through.
That's towards the end of the season. I mean, he was one of their best guys.
He did play well, but if you're counting on Kyle Torres to carry you in the playoffs, you're in trouble before you start.
Well, this has always been the problem with this has been my problem with a lot of Poile signings is he has tended to go for some guys that are just streaky by definition, and as they all streak the wrong way. I mean, it's like Duchene is streaky, Johansson streaky. Mm-hmm. These guys are like streaky potential great players. When they're great, but when they're bad, they're invisible, both of them. And you see that constantly. Forsberg tends to be way more consistent. But the thing about this team that people have to remember is they changed coaches not too long ago in real terms, of what happened here, and they changed not just coaches, but they changed whole systems. Like they changed the way they play, which is something that they have played Laviolette and before that, Trotz, both they had some similarities in their game that Trotz was more defensive minded, of course, Laviolette's more, but they both definitely had like we're going to outwork you everywhere. We're going to out hustle you all the time. We're going to play balls to the wall hockey constantly. And now they went to more of like we're going to be in position. We're going to be in the right spots, right time. That's a big shift, and I think that affected Philip Forsberg a lot. Like I felt.
Let me just say this because I look at Nashville, and there are a couple other teams in these playoffs where I wonder when another team will go the other direction when it comes to goaltending and start the other guy.
Yeah.
Like Columbus with Korpisalo. I think they'll probably start Elvis, and if Korpisalo or if Elvis doesn't do well, they'll go to Korpisalo. But I'm wondering how much rope Pekka Rinne has, because I think we've seen the signs this year that he's starting to show, he's starting to show his age. Let's just say that. Now, the thing is, I don't know how much confidence they have in Saros that they can go to him in a playoff scenario, but if they're down 2-0 with Pekka Rinne, they're going to have to go to Saros. The question is, would they pull him after one bad performance? And
you know what?
I don't know.
I think they would pull Rinne after one bad performance. Now, I think they're at that point with Rinne. That's the impression I got this year, and Saros did okay. He actually had some really good games.
He had a good season, and
I think they will pull Rinne if he's not right quickly.
I mean, the advantage with Saros and the problem with Saros is in the division that they play. Saros is a little small for the forwards
no question.
I always felt like they play in a division that's a lot. Now Arizona is not really that kind of a team. They're not like a big, huge, giant upfront team. So that could help Saros a little bit. It kind of leans a little bit towards maybe that's a better position for Saros to be in. Saros is definitely quicker, but I think if there's one thing I can say about Pekka Rinne, it's like, rumors of my death are exaggerated guy. Like that's what he is. Like how many times have we said that Pekka Rinne is falling apart? Like how many times have we said that this is it? Pekka Rinne's lost it again, and then he comes back in. I mean, he's one of the least affected goalies by any of that stuff.
No, but you know what? Here's the biggest thing that I took off Pekka Rinne. Both he and Lundqvist, seeing them in the locker room this year, it's the thinnest I've ever seen them. And anytime an athlete, especially a goalie, gets thinner, it's so they hope to still get better speed going post to post. And you know what? Rinne has not recovered any of that speed going post to post. You've seen enough games to notice that.
Yeah, I'm going to argue that Rinne plays his worst against teams kind of like Arizona in a weird way.
Yeah, that's my concern. They hit quick. They get into the zone, and if they get you in transition. Now again, Rinne, I think very much relies upon a good blue line in front of him.
Yeah,
and they are, I think, as we said, more positionally sound under Hines than they were under Laviolette, which again, it always seems there's only a certain window of time before teams seem to tire in Laviolette's system, and you have to shift almost to the opposite direction. But
yeah, this is very much.
I will say the Coyotes are well. I think they're pretty well structured. I think you have enough on the wings talent in Kessel. If Kessel gets it really going, Hall, as Kevin stated, can potentially take over a series. And I think there's enough young talent that, again, if they can swim in the deep end of the pool in a short series, they could chase the Preds out of this postseason. Matter of fact, if you put it to my head, I would say I would actually pick Arizona in this series.
The one thing I'll say is it wouldn't shock me if Victor Soderstrom gets in there. He's a really good defenseman. He plays in the SHL, so he could play it with pace, and he definitely has offense in his game. If they could somehow get him in there, that really does help Arizona's chances. But again, I don't know what he's going to look like in camp, right? That's the whole thing.
What are your thoughts on the goalie situation, Kev?
Well, I think Nashville will be quick to pull the goalie. Pecorine, they always tried to protect him because he's such a popular player, maybe the most popular player in Predators history. But he just hasn't been the same goalkeeper. And you can protect him all you want. You can say, well, no, it wasn't him. It was defensive breakdowns. But everybody who watched him knows that he just has not been the same. And I agree. I think what Mike was talking about is very true. You can identify, I don't know, 8, maybe 10, probably 8 teams that would be quick to make a goalie switch. And I would put Nashville near the top of that list.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, the thing that Rennie has that works against him is that when he gets against teams like this, which you saw like a little bit against Pittsburgh in the Stanley Cup Finals, is he tends to overplay everything. Like he's out too far on his angles. He's moving too far up side to side. He gets super aggressive. And if you have a team that can pass well side to side, if you're a side to side goalie wants to be closer to the net, that's just the bottom line. The closer you are to the net, the shorter the distance side to side. So you move out, and this is what Rennie ends up with a lot of times. Like he ends up moving too far out, and that can be very, very tricky. And I think that what we're going to see with him is, and yet Soros is quick, side to side, short and tight. I think the two guys who have who are probably had the weirdest seasons and yet could really make this series happen are both on Phoenix, like you said, and they are Arizona, and they are two guys who are stars, and Phil Kessel and Hall, right? So,
well, the one thing is, Hall has the motivation. I think he needs to make an impression going into in this playoff. Not to say he's not going to get paid, but if he has a big playoff, I think he gets paid more. I think he gets probably a longer term deal. Whereas Kessel, I've been questioning his motivation for ever since he went to Arizona, and the way he played this year doesn't deflect those questions. I think he's been golfing too much in Scottsdale.
Well, he's gone down from 82 points to 38, but some of that's the Crosby effect and the power play in Pittsburgh. However,
that's also stylistically in Arizona versus how they play.
Yeah. I don't question his motivation, but I do question his training, and I do kind of wonder what Kessel will come back like, and that is a worry. And so that's why, unfortunately, I'm not even going to count him as like a big factor in this series. He's going to have to prove it to me.
Yeah, I'm not even considering him, just simply because it's been so long since Phil Kessel has been Phil Kessel.
He was really good.
And Rick Tocchet is his guy.
Yeah.
He went there, and that was the thing. He was going to suddenly be, Phil again, and he really showed no signs of that. And I have no idea why it is. Maybe he's just near the end. But training, could be an issue. Once you reach this age, we hear guys talk about it all the time. There has to be a recommitment to do more than you've done in the past.
Yeah.
And some guys just simply, either don't want to or are incapable of pushing it to that. Look at a guy, contrast where Phil Kessel is compared to Zdeno Chara, who is a vegetarian and works so hard to stay in the game. And
he's done every bit of work and he's not just done it like the last 2 years. He's been doing this for like 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a conscious decision. To work harder because he loved the game and he wanted to stay. And the results have been like I remember talking to Tuukka Rask, who said, I believe that he's a better skater now at the time he was in his late 30s, than he was when he was 30 or in his late 20s. That's how hard he worked at improving his fitness and his technique and everything else. Well, we just haven't seen that from Phil. I mean, he could be working harder for all I know, but it doesn't seem like he is.
I do
feel like a quarantine would be a great idea for Phil Kessel.
Yeah. I do also kind of wonder as well, and Kevin, I do wonder, being in Pittsburgh, kind of having when you have Malkin and you have Crosby in front of you, you can kind of, he seemed to have flourished better when he was not sort of the primary focus. And when he went over to Arizona, that was the big acquisition. He was the primary focus. And we saw that a little bit, obviously, in Toronto as well, that when it's high expectations and you're the guy, Phil seems to me to shrink a little bit. But when he has a real good support system with stars and with him, he seems to perform better. But again, at the same time, we've got years on now. And you're right, we're getting closer to the latter part of his career, and you have to be willing to do things that don't necessarily make you comfortable in order to keep playing at a high level.
Here's the interesting thing.
Chara does that, as Kevin stated.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that is Phil Kessel has been a pretty good playoff player, but not a great playoff player. I was looking through his playoff stats. I mean, he has had some really good playoff runs. But he's generally, he's 77 points in 87 games, which is, that's not bad.
But it's not star quality, right?
It's not quite where he is in the regular. Like he's, not his points.
He has had, in fairness, big games though.
He has,
yeah. I mean, he's had some games when he was just memorable.
Yep.
Then unfortunately, you said before, streaky players. Kessel's been that guy.
No, he definitely has been that guy.
Where all of a sudden you didn't see him, and then in Pittsburgh we're writing how Kessel turned the series. Right?
I know. We've seen it.
Well, and the difference now is that early in his career he understood what it meant that he had to make it better for everyone else, and because he knew what his talent was, and then he got to Pittsburgh and everyone had to make it better for Phil Kessel. And now he's back to Arizona where he's supposed to make it better for everyone else.
Yeah.
Phil Kessel, and now he's forgotten or can't do that anymore because I think he's still waiting for Sid to give him the pass. Excuse me, it's Malkin. It was Malkin.
But we're
Malkin to give him the pass, and Malkin's not there.
Or be a part of that killer power play, like that New Jersey power, that Pittsburgh power play. He was instrumental. And now Hall, on the other hand, how many playoff games? They could guess how many playoff games Taylor Hall has played.
Hardly, not a ton.
Right, he's played 5.
Yeah.
Last year, all of the New Jersey Devils in 2017-18. Okay, so in those 5 games, though, the Devils were eliminated in 5 games the first round that year. He put up 6 points, and
that was also a better year throughout for him.
Sure.
He's not been the same player this year at all.
However, I tend to think players like him are definitely find another level in the playoffs.
See, I can't say that because this is not a normal playoffs, and the Taylor Hall we saw just a few months ago was not even close to that MVP Taylor Hall. So what's changed? What's going to make him? You know what I mean? I can't say that.
You know better than anybody, Russ. His big games when he was coming up as a prospect, was he a big game player?
Yeah, I do think he was at that time, but this whole season he hasn't been a big game anything.
Oh, I know, but it's a new. This is hockey players love new beginnings. This is a new beginning. This does nothing.
This could be a function of him and Tuckett's system, and you could say all the hocus pocus you want, and that usually does work with great players. But it could be the Tuckett system just holding them back.
True. Special teams. I always think it's goaltending and power plays, and we'll end with this before making predictions. I always think goaltending and power plays are the playoffs, right? That's the big thing. So, goaltending. I think you got to go with Arizona if Kemper's in there, right? I mean, Arizona's the better goaltender.
Yeah, they
right?
get a little edge, no doubt.
Yeah, I think for sure the edge is.
Yeah, I think it's pretty.
Arizona, and there's no reason to think that Kemper, won't be at his best.
Yeah, I mean, he should be healthy. Everything should be fine.
Yeah, Preds don't. If the Preds don't flip, as Russ stated, Preds don't flip the switch. That's it. I think Arizona is the more younger, more motivated team. Better. I think they can match defensively. They may not have the best defenseman in the series, but they've got a pretty good core there. And I think Kemper is at the moment. I think he's better than Rene. So, yeah, I'm gonna go Arizona.
Yeah. Now penalties and power play, penalty killing and power plays. Think of the Predators. So who's your best penalty killer? Is your goaltender? They always say, right? The Predators have good defense. They should be pretty good penalty killing team. Well, they weren't. The Predators probably are one of the worst special teams I've ever seen make the playoffs. I mean, I want to throw that out there. They're 28th in penalty killing. 28th. The Predators.
Yeah, and that's a 2-year issue. It was let we've continued the tradition after his departure. Yeah,
and the crazy thing about that is they're 28th despite killing off 20 power plays in a row to end the season. So they killed off 20. So I mean, if anything, they got better. And you could say, okay, you want to know they got the penalty killing thing together, but they also probably were their power play is 29th. So, I mean, I can't remember a team making the playoffs with a 28th and 29th ranked situation ever.
I mean, the only thing you could say is maybe with the coaching change, and maybe that is something that helped at least the PK. The power play, that's mystifying. But that could be mystifying for any team, any season.
Yeah. The Coyotes, meanwhile, surprisingly enough, their penalty killing was 5th best in the NHL. Their 5th best, 82.7% killing penalties.
That's why they were one of the best defensive teams in the league. They were.
They really were. And when you look at Derek Stepan, Richardson, Grabner, they're all very good offensively killing penalties too. They're a dangerous team. They scored more shorthanded goals than anybody else, I believe. I'm not positive of that, but I remember reading that stat somewhere. I know they had a lot. Yet their power play for the Coyotes was also 18th best, so it wasn't much to talk about there either. So you're talking about two teams. We know that they can't score goals, so they're looking at that at the end of the day. I was looking for any expanded roster players that could help either of these teams.
Well, I already mentioned the one for Arizona. For Nashville, I mean, I'm not sure there is one, and I'm not sure they would play him if there was.
The one guy that I think everybody assumed at some point is going to wake up is Tolvanen, but he hasn't shown it.
No, he hasn't shown it.
Just hasn't. Everybody was so excited about him.
Yeah, I was too.
Everybody at the draft, and I saw him at the Olympics live, and I thought, boy, he's going to come right over it because there were top players at the Olympics, and he looked very comfortable. And he looked dangerous. I still remember the end of that draft, and when the Flyers traded away Braden Shen to St. Louis and got that pick, my assumption almost immediately was they're going after Tolvanen. Yeah.
They ended up drafting Morgan Frost instead, but I was almost sure that was the reason why they were making that trade. That's how excited everybody was about Tolvanen.
Yeah. Right. And you all know Tolvanen actually was really good in his junior career in big games, right? That was one of his big things. He would put up multiple goals, and he would, now the Predators had some young guys come in, and then some people that kind of added to the roster towards the end, like Frederick Gaudreau. You talked about him, right? Like that's an
I think the magic's gone with Freddie Gaudreau.
I can report that the Predators are considering Tolvanen, bringing him in.
Right.
Okay. I know that to be the case, that there's discussions about, whether they, because everything's so different anyway.
Yeah. He has a great shot. Like, you get him open, he's kind of a pro shot.
Again, there's a guy these guys are looking for like lifelines, and this could be his lifeline. This could be what turns him around. This weird oddity of the thing, playing in this could be what turns him around. So, I mean, I definitely would bring him in, and Puel has done that before, right? Like, Puel's not afraid of doing that. How many times he went back to Radulov? he likes his skilled players that could be iffy, but he likes them.
That's actually one of my favorite NHL traditions. We haven't talked about it much in recent years, but there's always been a sort of tradition to sort of alter things with enough to raise some eyebrows going into the postseason. Like you create a new fourth line. Like go back all the way to 1990 when you got that kid line together for the Oilers, and sometimes they bring up the top scoring line from the minors and integrate them. I mean, we've seen all sorts of things.
It's amazing. I remember Issa Tikkanen lining up with Curry and Gretzky in the Stanley Cup Finals in Philadelphia. We didn't know who the hell he was. We're like, I'm in there, and who's that guy? Issa Tikkanen, like he was, a player like out of nowhere comes into a situation and just makes a big difference. I love that. There've been some really good historical.
Or sometimes it's just one guy, young guy, gives it a chance. And also it's as my dogs make their guest appearance.
They're fine.
It just seems like for some reason, even coaches who are afraid of rookies, suddenly get a little comfortable when they're looking for just a little edge in the playoff.
That one more goal. You need that one goal.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be one in playoffs. We see it all the time. It's the one goal. Sometimes it's just the one goal that changes it all. That changes everything.
That's well phrased. They're looking for the guy that can score that one goal.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is a rookie who, doesn't know what he doesn't know. Yeah.
And sometimes it's the guy who didn't play, the first 18 minutes of the overtime, but then it's on the ice and bam, puts that in because they've had too many no whistles and they got to put another guy on. Yeah. I mean, we've seen that too. Like, the famous one, of course, is like Peter Klima's goal, years ago with Edmonton in that crazy game, where he hadn't played for the first two overtimes or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And what I remember about the score sheet afterward is you'd look at it and, people would have, playing time 48, 49 minutes, whatever it was. And there'd be everybody had just had a ton of minutes. And then there's Peter Klima, the star of the game, like 8. It was. I don't remember what it was, but it was so dramatically ridiculous.
It was perfect. To me, it was like the Rocky moment of he's fighting right-handed, and then no one knows he's really a lefty or whatever. When they threw Klima on the ice, because the Oilers, everybody was so tired in that game. I remember watching that game, and Klima stepped on the ice with so much energy, and he was already fast as hell anyway. I mean, it was the perfect moment to put him out there. It was crazy.
Well, and he was the only one in the building, including the fans, with fresh legs.
Yeah,
even the fans were tired. The fans were tired. Everybody was exhausted. Because the Boston Gardens, it was sweaty in there. Humidity. It was, people were just, their tongues were hanging out.
I remember Kareem lost at least 10 pounds one playoff series against the Celtics.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let's go to predictions on this one. Hard. Mike gave me his. He says Preds in 5. I'll start. I'm going to go with Arizona in 5, which kills me because I love when the Predators go far in the playoffs, but I think that this is just a bad matchup for them, in my opinion. I don't know. That's mine.
I'll go Arizona in 4. I don't think Nashville's going to score, and I do think that the Preds, Arizona penalty kill is a big thing.
Yeah, I'm going Arizona too. In 5. I certainly the Predators capable of winning this, but I haven't seen enough to give me confidence, and I've seen more out of Arizona. We think of the Predators and their great defense, but the Arizona Coyotes defense is really good too. So
it's better. It's better overall.
Yeah, overall team for sure.
Yeah. And what do you think, Ant?
I'm in the same boat. I'm Arizona in 4, and I wouldn't be too surprised if it's a sweep. If they get on them early, they could put them out of this series. It all comes down to motivation in many ways with Nashville and goaltending. But I think I'm going to say 4 officially, but it wouldn't shock me if they clean sweep them.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about this that I think works against the Predators is not having fans in the building. The Predators are a team that really feeds off its crowd in that building. I mean, they really are one of the teams that I've seen that you can generally feel the difference when they play in that building when the fans get going. And I think that, they're going to have to not, I mean, it's always motivation, and what you have to lose is such a big deal in the playoffs, and the Arizona Coyotes have to feel like they've got almost nothing to lose. Like they're in a spot where they haven't, most of these guys haven't played in a playoff game even, and they're in an exciting, where the Predators were in the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years ago. So talk about the difference in pressure there is intense. And that's a really intense difference. So one team's got to be nervous. One team's got to be playing not to lose, and one team's playing to win. I think at the end of the day, like the Predators are playing not to lose, and the Arizona Coyotes are playing to win. That's going to make it. That's going to change it. So that's a great one. All right, let's get on to let's talk about the Norris Trophy because we want to talk about that. And this is a really interesting one this year. I mean, this was a runaway for the first 3 quarters of the season, right?
Yep.
Like the Norris was like, there was no question. Carlson was having he was going to be the Norris Trophy winner for the decade. Like, let's just throw it out there. He was the best for a single season. Carlson's year was incredible. And then he sort of like the last little bit fell off the map and other guys came up. What are your thoughts, Kevin, on this award?
Well, I think that's exactly what happens. I think it's a bit of a toss-up now. I think Carlson was the early front runner. I think there are a lot of guys that are still with him. There was kind of a drumbeat. Some people don't think that Carlson is as good defensively as others do. And then there's Josi that everybody views as a great all-around player. And Josi has an incredible number of shots as well. And he's an analytics guy as well. And so it's really going to kind of come down to, your feeling. Also, I think subconsciously writers are wondering whether it's Josi's time. I hate that as a former president of the Writers Association. I hate that, but I'm not going to deny that it exists.
Psychologically, it exists.
Yeah, it does. But if I had to guess, I'd guess Carlson's still going to win it. But I wouldn't be stunned if it's Josi. I do think it's a 2-man race, though.
I had it as a 2-man race on my ballot. I went Josi number 1 because when I really looked at things, Josi is the leading scorer on his team. He's 5th leading in goals. Like you said, he had 236 shots. Like he had to shoot. There were games he was shooting 7 times a game. Now, Carlson, I do believe, does play defense. He blocks also, and he does hit more than people think.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think that's a lazy narrative. But the problem with Josi for Carlson is Josi's points meant so much more to the Predators and his presence than Carlson to the Capitals. There were some games Josi played 2 or 3 31-minute games. He played back-to-back 29-minute games. He averaged about 1:30 over Carlson over the year. But the reason he did is because of these games where he's playing playoff minutes, and it was the only thing keeping Nashville alive. Let's be honest.
No, it's so true. I mean, and with goaltending in there, that's shaky too. Like
it's not Carlson's fault that he's on a better team. Like
it has nothing to do with
can't hold.
No, I wouldn't hold.
No. What I'm saying,
Well, I'm just proving worth. Like to me, Norris, I'm just proving worth to the team. That isn't Carlson's fault. No,
that's more of an. That's as much a team MVP discussion there, Russ, as it is.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah, I agree. It's hard for me to accept that as an argument, even though it's absolutely the truth.
Okay, well, he's a better defender. He is a better defender.
Yeah, nothing Carlson can do to counter that. I mean,
no,
so.
But Josi's a better defender. He is.
Yeah. Carlson, unfortunately, I mean, I always say this, but I get ripped for this all the time. But I think if Carlson was Canadian, it would be a different story. I'm just throwing it out there.
I think there may be something.
Because I think that like the fact he's not given credit defensively has to do with more of that. I think just like they look for anything. The Canadian media tends to look for anything they can on guys that sometimes aren't Canadian.
And yet Roman Josi is Czech and
Swiss.
Yeah. I'm losing my mind here. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. No, it's all the same. Switzerland, Czechoslovakia, they're all the same.
Goodness.
No, but I think the American Canadian, like there's a tendency to think American, offensive minded, only defenseman. There's not like a great 2-way defenseman from America. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I get the feeling that Carlson still has that. Not saying he's not going to win it because of it, but I'm just saying
there is a great 2-way defenseman from America. It's Seth Jones, but
right. Oh yeah, absolutely, no question about it.
He got hurt though. That was his fault.
That's how they're going to look at it historically.
Here's something else if you want to look at it. I mean, again, Josi did have more goals. He may have had fewer points, but again, they needed him to score. They did, and for the most part, you could see based on the stats that he definitely did everything he could to keep his team in the playoff race. And to me, that's part of the award.
Yeah. It is. What do you think, Dave?
I don't think you could be unhappy no matter who won.
No,
I think I agree, Kevin. It's definitely, as you stated, a two-man race. And again, Carlson had a substantial lead for a long time during the season, and then, performance did drop off. And I at this point now, if I had a ballot, it would be real tough. But I'm in the camp that I think Yossi may have just tipped him at the finish line.
I mean, I'll give you my other three too, because I think they're worthy of talking about. I had Hedman next, I had Peter Angelo next, and Shea Theodore fifth. Theodore, I think, quietly had an amazing year. Yeah. The way Las Vegas had to lean on Shea Theodore at his young age, he really, I don't think he got credit for
the coaching change, adding it through coaching change as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Shea Theodore actually jumped up. What was interesting about Shea Theodore is he jumped up into people's talks for like Team Canada, in the Olympics, like that kind of thing. That's how good of a year he had, which you never heard before.
Shea Theodore is the best defenseman that no one in the NHL fan base knows about.
Yeah,
he was especially good in the second half of the season. I think he had 13. I think he only had one power play goal. Like people think of him as a great power play guy, but I think 13 or 14 of his goals were even strength.
Right.
And he was a significant reason why the Vegas Golden Knights got their act together. In the second half, and we're 8-2 down the stretch. And this was really his breakthrough.
It was a breakthrough year. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, and he had a good year when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. He had a really good year that year too. But I tend to agree with you guys. This was a breakthrough year for him.
I mean, the reason he got drafted where he did, I think he was in the 20s. It sounds about right to me. Because he played for the Seattle Thunderbirds. They don't get a hell of a lot of press. They don't get a lot of television coverage. Not a lot of newspaper coverage. So people knew about him. They knew he was an offensive defenseman and was fast and everything. But going into that draft, I even felt like I didn't have enough information on Shea Theodore. I knew a fair amount, but you didn't know enough, and that's because of the market. Barzal, I think we knew a little bit about more just because of the flashiness. Shea Theodore is not a flashy player as a result. So
right.
Well, the best way to sum up Theodore is in the year they went to the final, they really didn't even trust him.
Yeah,
right.
In the key moments.
Yeah.
Now they want him on the ice in the key moments.
Right.
And I think they made a really smart, sneaky move getting Alec Martinez. That team did, because I think the Knights. Because I really think that Martinez is a lot like Shea Theodore. Like I think that's a veteran guy that he can learn from. Like I think.
Well, he's good at overtime goals. We could say that.
But I also he has an ability to be like he's very good. He reminds me of Shea Theodore in a lot of ways, like the way they play. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's something to it. I mean,
for a younger defenseman to have like a guy like that to look to, you can learn a lot from Martinez. And Martinez is going to help them, but that's also I love when they bring in a guy that could actually help a key player on their team.
And they needed it because we talk about the Knights, we talk about how low, obviously the ridiculous level of talent they have up front, big, strong, fast players up front, and Pacioretty and Stone and Stastny, and we don't talk enough again about their blue line because they've had that sort of reputation of they were it was like a no-name defense going. Brave McNabb, one of your top defensemen at that time, going into the final that year, and everything flurry. That becomes obviously a concern. So we have to. I think hopefully after this season, people recognize and see what Shea Theodore contributes to that blue line. And again, having a guy who stylistically is similar, that's going to help them going forward, and having a Martinez on board, especially if they're on separate pairs, that balances a lot of things out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, last year he was a point a game in the playoffs. So again, that was probably when we started to really see him maturing. He's 24 now. Like that's the age, 24, 25 is when, the age when defensemen do start to really mature. So that's why I gave him a nod at 5. Jan, we're doing Norris. I didn't have D'Angelo on my Norris. I had him as an all-star, but not as a Norris, because to me, still Norris now denotes some defense, and he doesn't play enough defense yet for me. The points were there, but not anything else.
Yeah, Kevin Free's out for a bit, but come back as Jan, which is kind of surprising. So welcome.
Sorry, your endorsement to bring me in. Thanks there.
Yeah, Jan, we were talking about. We also would like to get your pick for the Predators Arizona series. We were talking about it. a lot, and we just went through it. And what are your thoughts on it?
Sorry, I'm just gonna have to kind of get caught up quickly. So
yeah, no, I didn't warn you. So this is a big. This is a pop quiz, Jan. Just to let you know, pop quiz on the Predators in Arizona.
Okay, sorry, you guys are breaking up a bit. So
no problem.
I mean, I guess I would kind of ask what everybody else picked just to kind of help level set
what we
me,
did,
so
we
I can
talked
kind of
about
figure that out. Also,
I did Arizona in 4.
Yeah, well, Mike,
Really?
Mike went with the Predators in 5. Anthony with Arizona in 3 or 4. And I
4. He went 4
We're
too.
going to say 4 officially.
4, possibly 3. Yeah, and Kevin and I both with Arizona in 5. Mainly on the strength of goaltending. Like the difference between Kemper and Rinne. Which this year
Penalty killing too.
And penalty killing with Predators. That was the odd thing I mentioned about the Preds. One of the weirdest stats they could think of I've ever seen for a playoff team is a playoff team going into the playoffs that's 28th worst on the penalty kill and 27th worst on the power play. Like that for a team to go into a playoffs like that, and they were a legitimate playoff team. That's just nuts.
especially with Josie from the point, right? And on a power play, you would think they'd be a lot better. So, I mean, in my opinion, there's a couple of things. So it's interesting. So one, I think if somebody told you before the year that Arizona would be viewed as having better goaltending than Nashville, you'd probably say they're a little crazy. But Darcy Kemper, as you said, has been phenomenal, right? He's been phenomenal ever since he's come back there and solidified what was a somewhat of a weakness on that team. B, the guy who I'm looking for, who in my opinion needs to have a big series, is Clayton Keller. If they can get Clayton Keller can really be that number one center that they need, and just at a minimum outplay Ryan Johansson, which I think we'd all admit that the Johansson for Seth Jones trade has been relatively lopsided in favor of the Jones side of the house.
For sure.
In my opinion, if Keller has that kind of series that we think that Keller can have based upon the talent level, then I'll agree with Rust. And I think they could win that series in probably 4 games because I do think that's how good Clayton Keller is and how much of an impact he has generating offense for that squad, especially when you factor in the goaltending differential, and also the lack of home ice advantage, in my opinion, would weigh a little bit towards Nashville in this case. But since it's more neutral site, right, where clearly there's going to be no direct impact to either team, I do give that as an edge also to Arizona, where in the past that the Nashville home crowd might have meant another win for them in the series.
They really do. I brought up the same point. There's very few teams that get as big a boost as the Predators do at home. They really have been in that building, and you have to be in that building.
Looking at records.
Yeah. No, I know, but but it's just but there's the feeling of being in. I've been in a lot of the buildings and felt the way a home team affects a team, and that building just affects that team. There's no question about it. Cam Young throws on a rumor that Edmonton has been picked for a hub city under our chat room. I don't know about that. I haven't heard about that.
No. I mean, look, Mackenzie came out and said that Tampa
got to give us where did you hear this, Cameron Young, in the chat room? Let us know what you're hearing.
No. Bob McKenzie did a report, and Elliot Friedman backed it up. McKenzie said there was a team that had like 5 tests come out positive so far, and basically it was corroborated that it was Tampa. But again, what I don't understand, Eck, and this is for
the Edmonton Journal. He's saying Cam Young saying that he's reporting this.
Okay, what I don't, but that could be a little late. I saw it with the other guys. Either way,
we'll see.
What I don't understand is for any sport right now is you have these markets in the South that are the worst in the United States, Arizona and Florida.
I know.
Why in the world? And this has been building for this for weeks. It's not like it just happened. We can't say we didn't know. And they let those teams stay there and train there. And I don't understand why somebody didn't say, hey, you know what? This is not a safe area. We need to go somewhere else. And now, unfortunately, they're going to be a little delayed.
All right, this is a fake Jim Matheson account.
Yeah, it was a fake.
So there's no problem at all. We know we love fake Twitter accounts. They're the best.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think also is that Russ, given the shirt that you're wearing, the NBA needs to now start to consider as Walt Disney World the right option for them also. Very substantial. And there's also been a lot of talk, interesting enough, is let's say baseball does return, which I know we all know that may not happen. Do they allow playing in New York because of the fact that the numbers in New York have warranted potentially the ability to open it up a little bit and allow spring training or other events possibly in New York, where they've talked about having even fans in some of the stadiums based upon moving forward. And again, we may be premature, but look at where you compare and contrast what's happened in New York, numbers wise, to now what's going on in Arizona,
right,
and Florida, and Texas, and everywhere else where everything's been
they're
opened
not
up.
going to have fans, and I think they are end up going to play in empty stadiums in New York because they're literally going to get bust in and bust out. I don't think they'll stay in New York. I think they will play there, and then they will go to a city and stay. That's a lot safer. That's what I think they're going to do. So I don't think it's an issue, but I think these places have been hotspots for weeks and weeks. And it just seems, matter of fact, even last week, I said if I were the Leafs, I'd have gotten Austin Matthews and Freddie Anderson out of Arizona before all of a sudden the state says, hey, everything's closed and you can't. You know, this is something you could have foreseen happening, and it stinks. It does.
Forget that we have a very, very big country. I'm gonna throw that out there. It's just kind of like people don't get the concept of like, you know, like we are bigger than, you know, Europe. You know, Europe.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's a big, big country. So therefore, things in Arizona and Florida that are happening now that happened in like in New York and in California and Pennsylvania or in New Jersey a little while ago. Yeah, it's bad there right now. It's going to get
better. The other
better.
thing I want to mention, and this was on ESPN, and I can't remember the reporter, an NBA reporter, but it bears repeating. He basically said the NBA's plan is if someone were to get COVID is, so when you quarantine someone, you have to quarantine them for 14 days. Then they have to take a cardiac test. During all of that time, the player can't exercise at all.
Right.
So now, after you get a player cleared, there's going to be getting back in shape factor too that we have to, and that's why the rosters have to be this big, because again, it's going to take a lot out of the player, even as great athletes they are, but also he just won't be in the same shape because he's going to, he's not going to be able to do anything for 3 weeks.
Right.
Which is the big impact from a cardio perspective.
Right.
And then it also depends on, honestly, not that it's been talked about, what level of player also gets impacted. Are you talking a guy who's a bench player, or are you talking one of the superstars or a couple of superstars on your team? And how does that impact the mindset of whether or not you
so you bring that up, Jan. It's a great point. I don't understand, and maybe Anthony has a better idea, why the NBA decided that the starters don't have to wear masks on the bench, but the guys behind them do. Shouldn't everybody on the bench be wearing a mask when they're not playing? Like, I don't understand why the starters don't have to be.
While they're on the court?
No, when they're on the bench.
On the bench? No, I would think I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, that just seems like illogical.
Yeah.
I hate to quote Spock like that, but
I mean, if I'm basketball,
quoting Spock is actually a good, usually the right way to go.
Think about this for a second. If you're basketball, okay, and you're hockey's got to be played indoors. Hockey's got to be played indoors most of the time because we can play it outside, but it's a big deal to put that ring together and all that stuff. But basketball can be played outside.
That's a great point. I mean, it really can be played outside.
I mean, there's no point. There's no reason it can't be. So why? I mean, we're seeing the huge difference between indoors and outdoors. Is what I'm saying. That's right. I mean, in Minnesota and other places where they've had these tests after the rally, after all the protests and everything like that, they're finding that the jump has not been very big because so we all saw the protests. Some people were wearing masks, some weren't. But the difference between outside and inside is huge.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the Harlem Globetrotters played on Gilligan's Island.
Oh yeah, you can play basketball outside. I mean, all they need is a court.
Come on, man.
They did. I remember.
They did. Absolutely, they did.
That was really jumping the shark.
Right, that's why New York playground guys don't shoot from the outside; they go to the hole because of the wind aspect. Russ, and you know that.
The wind.
I know. I've been to the park.
Let me check. Yeah, we're not
like white men can't jump. That's moving about 3 to 4 inches that way.
But what Eck brings up is a point where they probably could do that in Vegas or someplace like that if they really wanted to.
Put a couple nice outdoor courts where you can put cranes for filming and all that stuff. You don't have any issues. There's no issues with that. Like you can easily do this outside.
But it is different than the regular game. Like there is a difference though.
Sure. I'm sure it's different from the regular game, but I mean, these guys should be good enough to handle that. I mean, it's not like that to me. It's not like the end of the world. I mean, when you're talking about Florida, you're not talking about, like Chicago. You're talking about Florida. It's going to be beautiful most of the time, and it's going to be 75 degrees and nice. So yeah, I don't know in the fall. That makes it curious to me. I'm really surprised. The way more I heard too about this, the more I keep thinking that baseball is going to end up playing in regular stadiums too at some point.
I think that's when they do it. That's what's probably going to happen because Florida's just not a good spot.
Yeah, it's not. It's just, and if it is true that you can play, if this thing doesn't spread that much in crowds outdoors, That's
well.
fun.
I mean, the fun part is they've talked about, right, is the contract tracing, right? Who have they interacted with?
Yeah.
But I think more importantly is figuring out who they were interacted with coming in that may have caused, right? Was it the players or was it some of the staff members who may have been traveling external to the facility and brought it back into the facility and then interacted?
Or was it family that's traveling outside, and then they bring it back in the household, right? I mean,
this is why they've all talked about the bubble and self quarantining and maintaining people within the bubble, as distasteful as that may be to people, and the fact that you're restricted. The only way to contain it and not make sure it doesn't spread or potentially be impacted externally is to make sure you do self-contain. That may be a way.
And I'll say this: maybe it's fair or not fair. I did raise an eyebrow when I saw that Patrick Marleau's wife was at practice. I was like,
Yeah.
I was really surprised about that in Pittsburgh.
Me too. I'm very surprised about that. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is such a.
How did
I've used the expression before, but it's like holding. It's like trying to hold sand, like in your hand.
Yeah.
Which again gets down to the whole thing here, Eck, of you don't want to say whether it's like jumping through 15 flaming hoops and hoping you don't get on fire. It's tough. This is really going to be tough.
It's really going to be tough, and which is why, like, I'm kind of. I mean, you guess logistically they have to wait. I just feel like the NHL should do everything they can to make this happen sooner than they've done. At this point, okay, the camps are opening in what?
Luckily they're in phase
July
2.
31st. Well, they're supposed to open July 10th potentially. So.
Yeah, we're still 3 weeks away from opening camps.
Yeah, there's still variations here and of how this is going to go. And again, that is intentional at the end of the day. I think they want to see where things are as we get into the summer months, if there are further outbreaks, and whether or not they need to, hate to say it, they get to a point where they feel like they're going to need to pull the plug.
Well, now you have your test case, right? And you need to see how they handle this test case and how long the recovery is.
Well, I'll give you an idea.
Which is why they probably baked in a month before they potentially open it. So if something happens, you know how to manage and deal with it.
I'll give you the idea of the complication. I think it was Jim Salisbury said, like, the Phillies are doing contract tracing, but the problem is there are 32 tests that are pending. So you can't do pending when you don't know. You can't trace somebody if you don't know if they were positive or not. So they have to sort of wait until they get those other tests to be able to do a full trace, right? That's the
well. I mean, I think honestly, you almost should view it while you wait for the results as they have tested positive and start tracing anyway, right? So because there's no harm in doing it, but then you can monitor exposure just in case.
You could do that.
Right. All right. Anyway, I think we're very much out of time here. I appreciate it. Sorry, I just got a text from. It's going to have to follow up on it a little bit about the host cities. Yeah, it has something to do. I'll just tease this out there. Is it something to do with like looking what's happening in Florida, worrying about what could happen possibly in Vegas? So that I don't know that Vegas. I think Vegas is still, like I said before, is not 100% as much as people want to say it's 100%. I think.
Well, we should say Canada has agreed to make things amenable for the host cities. So
so that's a good shift. Vegas. Why not?
If you look at the Edmonton plan, it made an awful lot of sense in terms of what they put together. Same with Vancouver.
But Jan, there was one thing. There was one thing about the Edmonton plan that Eck talked about that we heard about, and that players might be bored.
Right. Well, again, so remember we talked a little about what you think about what Orlando is doing, right? Having the entertainment there, that would be something that Edmonton or Vancouver, or anybody else other than Vegas, obviously, would need to figure a way in order to be able to bring that to light and bring that in-house to be able to maintain the interest level.
Right. All right, guys. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everybody out there. Stay safe, stay happy, and we'll be back on Monday to discuss these things. I was going to show you earlier, but I didn't show you that. I'll show you there.
It's Joe Sakic. That's all I saw.
Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you Monday. Yes, we will.